The use of pornography has become even more of an addiction and more common today as compared to previous generations. Recent stats say the number of women who are watching porn has been increasing, so not just the men. Today's guest is going to talk a bit about that. Dr. Joy Skarka joins us now from Bradenton, Florida. She's the Director of Discipleship for the ministry organization Authentic Intimacy and co-author of the book Her Freedom Journey, A Guide Out of Porn and Shame to Authentic Intimacy. Good to have you with us, Joy. Thanks for joining us here from Florida.
Thanks, Hal. So glad to be here.
Now, you personally had a bit of a struggle with pornography as well to help inspire the book. Tell us a bit about that.
I did, yes. So it kind of became my story and then my passion to help other women find freedom because I had so much trouble finding resources specifically for women. And so that added on a layer of shame as well. So, yes, it's my story and now my ministry.
Now, we know how much of an issue porn is for men. How has it become so much more of an issue for women these days? And let's talk about some of the statistics where you got your research from.
Yeah, so people are always shocked. Oh, women struggle with this? Really? I thought this was a men's issue. And so yes, actually one of the largest porn sites, they release their data every year, their statistics, their viewers, and they said that 36% of viewers in the last year 2023 were women, and that's globally. And that over the last 10, 15 years, every year increases. So we know that they are targeting women. They are creating porn specifically to women, marketing to us, and trying to capture us. And so, yes, it's growing exponentially.
I guess they think it's almost like an untapped audience, an opportunity to make even more money then, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And they are reaching in and creating this specific porn. It's almost like a romance movie, but rated, think of it as just rated R. It's tapping into our desire to be fully known and fully loved. And women are just so lonely and seeking for that. And so this is a false substitute that isn't actually helping.
And I guess people are also feeling lonely and vulnerable as well, are susceptible to the porn.
Yeah, so some of the reasons women turn to porn, it could be that loneliness, any really negative emotion like anger, frustration, isolation, kind of guilt, shame. They get stuck in this cycle of going back to it, feeling more shame, and then they can't get out of it until they begin to break free from some of those deeper root issues.
Now, from a Christian perspective and even from a wholeness perspective, why is pornography so wrong, Joy?
I know some people say, well, I only look every once in a while. What's the big deal? But really, you are watching image bearers. So if we believe everyone's made in the image of God, you're watching image bearers of God do things online that were created for a covenant relationship in a marriage, so between a man and a woman. So if you're married, you're inviting someone else into the bedroom. And if you're single, you're not living out God's design for wholeness, sexual wholeness and integrity. And so there's that piece. There's also the piece ethically that, a lot of pornography is attached to sex trafficking, and a lot that there's some research done that the performers have to be high or drunk to get through filming all day. So there's that element. And then lastly, how there's so much of it that makes it about you. So it becomes selfish for you and your desires instead of the purpose of marriage and sex and marriage intimacy to draw you closer and unify you. It actually does the opposite of make it all about you and separate you from one another.
Yeah, wouldn't it also create some unrealistic expectations, especially when you're married? Like you say to your wife or your husband, why can't you look like that?
Oh, yeah, because it's fake, it's edited, it's photoshopped. It makes sex, it portrays it in a way that's not realistic. And so it does create a lot of expectations for someone single who then gets married. And it's kind of like a letdown, like, oh, this isn't what I thought it would be. And so in our ministry, Authentic Intimacy, we do a lot of work helping those couples re understand what is God's design? How can we actually live this out and kind of get away from pornography?
So, Joy, in your opinion, how did society get to this point and this current state of sexual brokenness? What are some of the causes?
Well, there's a lot, right? It's more accessible. It's free. So back in the day, you had to go into a store, a building, right, and to buy it. Now it's everywhere. It's on your phones, and not even that. It's in what we see on a regular basis, like our social media, our movies. Everything is more X-rated, I guess you could say, than it used to be. And even you'd be so shocked, the average age of first exposure is 7 to 11 years old. Some research says 7, some says 11. And so you have some people who could have been watching this stuff for decades, and it's impacting your body, it's impacting your brain. And so they just think, oh, this is normal, this is okay. One research study actually said Gen Zs thought recycling, not recycling, was worse than watching pornography morally. Like, you should recycle is more important than pornography. So we don't have this understanding of what God's design actually says.
Should we also maybe look at what Hollywood has been putting out, maybe even advertising agencies with some of their clients when it comes to soft porn? Maybe that is like becomes a launching pad?
Right. I mean, they say what sex sells is is the slogan, and we see that really impacting people. And so for women, especially a little different than men, women are drawn to erotica, which is a type of soft porn, like you mentioned. And so if you look at like the 50 Shades of Grey phenomenon, that has captured many Christian women and get them reading and reading and now watching the films, and the films back on Netflix, I believe. And so, yeah, it really is capturing. And if you look at what it's doing, it's reaching into our desire to be fully known and fully loved, which is how God created us. But He's the only one that can fill that void. Not porn, not erotica, not a movie. Only He can fill that void.
So, Joy, what are some of the common things that really keep a person stuck in porn instead of finding freedom through Christ?
Yeah, so definitely the shame piece, especially for women, that isolation, the fear of telling somebody, oh, what if somebody knew? They're going to judge me. They're not going to want to be my friend anymore, or I'm not going to get the help I need. So there's that element. And then there's the actual physical addictive element. So pornography changes your brain, it changes your neurological pathways so that every time you're triggered by a similar thing, your first thought is, oh, let me do this, let me watch this. And so they've actually compared some of the brains of people on drugs, on alcohol, and porn. There's a lot of similarities there because it's that rush of dopamine, that rush of chemicals in your brain that keeps you wanting to come back for harder and more variety, different types.
How about if a woman has an accountability partner, her BFF kind of steps up to the plate and says, hey, what you're going down this path is wrong?
Yeah, that's great. It's just, it doesn't happen very often that a woman easily finds a friend who is willing to talk about it or even knows how to talk about it. That's one of the reasons why Julie, my co-author, and I created our book, Her Freedom Journey, because it's a tool for a friend, a discipler, a women's ministry leader, to be able to partner alongside with someone. Because since we don't talk about this a lot, people don't really know how to help someone who's struggling. So if there is a friend out there that's like, hey, I'm willing to help, that's a good friend.
Yeah, a true friend, you really says it as it is, right? Instead of tries to sugarcoat it, like bottom line, brass tacks, this is what you're going through right now. So why does trying harder typically not work, Joy? How does one really flee temptation in advance?
Yeah, so we actually have a chapter in the book called Stop Trying So Hard, because that's been the message in so many different spaces and different recovery fields of, oh, just stop looking at it. Or you might have heard of the phrasing white knuckling your way out of it. But, the more you think about something, the more you might want to do it, like the elephant in the room. And so we actually encourage women, stop counting your days, stop trying on your own strength. And it's actually an act of surrender. Like, it's you open up your hands and you say, God, I can't do this on my own anymore. I need your help. I need my community's help. I need the help of others because I'm stuck. I feel helpless, hopeless, all these things. And so it's really an act of daily surrender and obedience and joining with others in community.
What are some other practical steps someone can take to really pursue that freedom?
Yeah, so the first step we encourage people is to bring it into the light. So the enemy, he thrives in the darkness. That's where you're believing all those lies. That's where you're stuck. And so by sharing it with a trusted friend or even a counselor, a biblical counselor that you're struggling, that's a great first step. And then after that, creating kind of like a toolbox of things you can turn to in the moment of triggers and temptations, kind of like practical applications, like calling a friend, going on a walk, and then setting up some accountability software on all your devices devices, which is really important if you have little ones because they can easily just access stuff without even trying on the internet today. So that's a very practical tool that all parents can start doing now, even if their kid has never seen porn.
So, in your opinion, what are some of the lies that we believe about sexuality, and how do we really break free from them?
There are so many. This could have been a whole nother book because there are just so many lies that sex is dirty, that even having sexual desire as a single person, you kind of are told repress until you're married, when in reality, God created us all as sexual beings. You don't become a sexual person the day you get married. That's called the light switch effect. It's a myth. And so that's some of them. And then even that some people believe that God doesn't care about their sexuality. They think because God is so holy that he couldn't be a part of sex because we think of it sometimes as dirty. But the reality is he created it. He said it was good, and he didn't design for it to be shame based. And so he wants you to live in wholeness and have a healthy view. So those are just a few of them, but really how we could go on and on.
Now, can you explain the real spiritual aspect of sex, Joy? You suggest that sexual urges are reminders of God's intention for intimacy and a sexual covenant, correct? Between husband and wife.
Right. So this is a hard concept for many people to understand, but really our sexual desires and our longings point us back to God. And when I first heard that, I was like, what? That doesn't make any sense because we're just so used to kind of separating the spiritual and the physical element of it. But yes, like this is something God created, that longing, because he wants a personal, intimate relationship with us. And a marriage covenant, that is just a metaphor. It is just a glimpse of our relationship with him. And so we on earth just experience a tiny little snapshot at what he has created. And I know that's hard to wrap your mind around, but it's a beautiful thing when you think about it.
Now, you mentioned kids as young as 7 years of age have been introduced to pornography. That's just scary and shocking. What do parents really need to know about pornography to protect their kids?
I know, and I talk to parents all the time, and I tell them if you're not talking to your kids, the world is. I mean, so for me, part of my story was I actually saw it as a fifth grader. A friend introduced me to pornography, just opened up the computer, there it was. And then later, as a college student, when I had all these questions about sex, I just started Googling them, and that led me back to pornography, and that's when it really became a problem in my life. And so that's what's happening to our kids. They're curious. They go enter in their questions, or even now they ask Alexa, what is sex? Like people do that all the time. And so the kids are just so curious, they're innocent. And so you have to, as a parent, share it with them and answer their questions and be a safe place so that they're coming to you and not to the internet, not to their peers. And just realizing if you're not the one talking to them about sex, someone else is.
Joy, how does a daughter's relationship with her father really influence her need for love and acceptance, and maybe even her view of God?
It does impact it dramatically, but what I like to tell women is there's so much hope and healing that can take place. But for so many women, the way that they see God, so their view of God, is based off of their earthly father. So maybe if he was absent, maybe if he kind of was abusive emotionally or physically, or had very high expectations of them, wanting them to perform well as a kid. That's how they view God. And so they view him as a distant father and not a loving father. And so a lot of kind of my healing journey and the work that we do with our women is helping them to see who God actually is. Like, what are the lies you are believing? What is the image you're putting on God? Is it based on your earthly father? And helping them process through that really helps their healing journey.
So, what are some of the qualities of a good earthly father?
Oh, I love that question. So someone who's present, someone who like invests and spends time in them, cares, listens, asks good questions. It doesn't have to be a dad who has all the answers, right? None of us do, but one who's really present and active and loving in their life.
And let's say the daughter has issues with pornography and she wants to go to her mother. How should the mother really respond and support her daughter in that regard?
Yeah, so this is important for a mom or even a friend if someone comes to you and says, "Hey, I'm struggling with this." the way your face says, are you responding with empathy or are you responding with shock? Like, oh my goodness, I can't believe you just said that. That has so much of an impact on the person who's struggling, whether they feel shame or whether they feel safe and love and can talk about it. So your facial expressions, even just saying, wow, thank you so much for coming forward and sharing that with me. That had to be so hard. Thank you. And then helping them find next steps. Like even if you say, well, I'm not really sure how to help you right now, I'm going to find a way to help you. And our book, Her Freedom Journey, is such a great way. We've actually loved to have mothers and daughters go through it together. Now, it would be a great tool for mothers and daughters for discipleship, relationships, small groups. It has discussion questions built in. So perfect for that situation.
Dr. Joy Skarka is the co-author of Her Freedom Journey, a guide out of porn and shame to authentic intimacy. Joy, thanks so much for joining us today from Bradenton, Florida.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Hal.